Hi everyone, welcome back to the AI language. So today we are continuing with our course on OpenAI Agent Builder and we are going to look at something called guardrails. Guardrails are nodes that you can use to set up monitors for the inputs that are received by this node, and you can monitor for information like personally identifiable information or PII, jailbreaks, hallucinations and other kind of misuse. Once you monitor for this information, this check can either pass or it can fail. Once the check passes, you can actually end your workflow or continue it normally. If it fails, you might take a decision to remove that personally identifiable information. For example, over here using an agent. So for example, we had our simple workflow which used to generate a web page from a list of topics and produce an output. Now, this had only three nodes: the start node, the one shot web page generator, and the end node over here. Now, let's assume that the user in their query provide their name, their phone number, and their email address to add to the web page that is generated over here in a contact section. As the developer of this agent, you might not want that to pass through. You might want to redact that information or to remove it. And for that, you might add a tool like this, which is called Guardrail. You would ask the Guardrail to check for these sets of information like name, phone number, and email address. And if this fails, you can add a workflow that addresses that misuse of information. So for example, over here I've added an agent which is called Remove-PII. So this agent is going to take the output from the web page generator and remove the personally identifiable information that the guardrail has found. It is going to rewrite the entire web page without that information and then end the workflow. All right, so now let's start building this from scratch. So this is the workflow that we are going to build, and don't worry, I'm going to actually remove all these nodes and start from a single one-shot web page generator that we had looked last time, and then add these three new nodes one by one and set them up so that we can implement guardrails, detect personally identifiable information that's included in the web page, and then rewrite the web page and remove it and produce the final output. So let's start with that. All right, so as the first step, let me remove these extra nodes that I've added. Let me remove the guardrail node, the end node, and the Remove-PII node over here. Let me also remove the other nodes over here and just let's start from a blank canvas. All right, so we have the start node to begin with. And to build this with the guardrails, we're going to build a HTML page generator with guardrails. So I'm going to first add an agent over here. And let's connect the start node to the agent like so. Now let's configure the agent to build a web page for us. And let's write in a prompt over here for the agent. So I'm going to enter the prompt that you're a helpful assistant. Generate a single HTML, CSS, JS document, no other text or output to represent the web page that is requested by the user in their query. Remember, only give the unified HTML document. Okay. And I'm going to click save over here. So that's my prompt. And for the other settings, I'm mostly going to leave them on default. So the model will be GPT-5. The reasoning effort is low, and then the output verbosity is medium over here. For the output format, I'm going to change it to JSON. All right, and let's add a schema over here, and let's leave the default name, which is response underscore schema. And then let's add a property. So we'll call the property HTML doc like we did in our past lectures. And then we'll add a description for this over here. So I'll add the description unified HTML, CSS plus JS doc representing the entire web page. All right. So that's the description that I've added. Let me click on update. And this just simply completes the agent that we want. We can rename the agent over here. So let's call it one shot web page generator like we did last time. All right, so I've called it one shot web page generator. Let me just click outside to save this. And now we simply had the end node in our first version, the simplest agent that we had built. But instead, now we want to check for personally identifiable information. So I'm going to add something called a guardrail over here and connect these two together like so. Now we can actually set up the guardrail node by clicking it and then going to the settings over here. So as you see, it says guardrails run moderation, PII, jailbreak, or hallucination checks. All right. I'm going to name it as guardrails and I'm going to set up the input as output underscore text. So this is the output text from the last node. You can also choose HTML doc over here because after this we are going to include another agent which is going to rewrite this and again provide the response schema over there. So any one of these can be chosen. I'm just going to simply choose output text over here. Then you can select what all information do you want to monitor. So I'm going to monitor personally identifiable information as a test, and let's turn this on. And as soon as you turn this on, you see the pass and fail options come in over here. So these can then direct your workflow based on whether the guardrail checks pass or whether they fail. All right, so to do this, let's click on the settings gear over here. And once you do that, you get personally identifiable information guardrail dialog box. And you can select all the entities over here if you wish to. So there are common entities, there's country specific entities for US, UK, Spain, Italy, Poland, Singapore, so many of them, India as well. And what we can do is we can select the common entities, some of them over here to check it out. So I'm going to say person name, email address, and phone number. All right. And I'm going to click on save. Now, what does it mean to select those? It means that out of all the personally identifiable information, the guardrail is going to check for the person name, phone number, and email, and some of the other few that were already pre-selected. The other ones might be allowed to pass through. So you can actually have, a select group of data points that you can check for and pass them or fail them based on whether or not those data points are present in the output of the previous node. All right. So that sets up our guardrails node over here. All right, so the next thing is that we're going to build the fail branch over here, which is the non-trivial branch. The pass branch is simple and we're just going to end the workflow for that, right? So let's build the fail branch over here, which means that some personally identifiable information was found in the HTML page that was generated and what to do in that case. So let me just rearrange these nodes a bit over here and let's make some space for the other nodes. Now inside, in the case when the checks fail over here, I'm going to add an agent over here that just rewrites the web page and removes the PII. So the fail node, I'm just going to drag the fail output to the input of this agent and just put it over here. Let's move the canvas to the left a bit. And now we have this agent. Let's name this agent as Remove-PII. So this just tells us that this is the agent that's going to be used to remove the personally identifiable information. All right. Now let's expand the prompt and add some instructions for this agent. Now in the instructions, we want to say that you should read the input text. Right. It's the first thing I'm going to ask the agent to do is to review the input text input underscore text. And as you remember, this was an expression for the from the common expression language that we used last time. And to see how and what all expressions can you use over here, you can actually click on save for now. And we can click on this edge over here. So this is the fail edge. And if you click on this edge, you get information about this edge. So you get the source, which is the guardrails node over here. You get the target, which is the agent node over here. You get the connection status that the connection is set up correctly and it's valid. And then you get the source output schema and the target input schema. So we want to look at the source output schema over here, which is what we get as output from the guardrails node. So you can see that there is input underscore text. That is one of the string variables that's available in the output from the previous node. So to refer to this, you will just generally write input, which is your expression to denote the input to this node. And then you'll put input underscore text to get the entire input text that you get from the guardrail node. So this is going to be your HTML doc. All right. Now there's another object called guardrails, which contains objects for PII, moderation, jailbreak, etc. So we just want PII, right? And inside PII, you have a variable called failed, which is a true or false, whether that check failed or not. And then you have detected underscore counts, which is a list of strings. So if we refer to input underscore text, we can get the entire HTML doc. And if we refer to input dot guardrails dot pii dot detected underscore counts, we can get the list of string items that were detected as personally identifiable information. So we can use these expressions inside the prompt for the Remove-PII agent to ask it to rewrite the input text so that it can remove all these detected personally identifiable information items. So let's do that now. So let's select this again, and then let's again expand the prompt. And we've already said that review the input text, which is input.input underscore text. All right, so now we are going to redact all the personal identifiable information PII as identified in the list below. And then to get the list of items that were detected by Guardrail, I'll actually use what we just saw in the output for the Guardrails, the schema of that output. And we could see that the input is the common variable that we use to refer to the output from the previous node. Then we go to our Guardrails object inside that. Then we go to the PII object, and then we go to the detected underscore counts object to get the list of all the items that were detected. And we can just directly use that. We don't need to format it specially because this will anyways contain all the items that we want. And once we provide this to the agent can see what was the original HTML page, what was the information that was present inside it that it needs to remove. And then we can actually say treat all PII as real PII, because I'm going to provide a query where I might just say, my email address is abc@example.com. So I just want to make sure that I tell the agent for this particular example that treat all PII as real PII, even though it might look made up. So you need to remove it even if it's abc@example.com. And after redacting this information, add a line at the bottom that says the following set of data points are redacted from the web page. And the list of data points you redacted, names only. You should add this at the bottom. All right. So I think that completes our entire prompt, and we can click on save over here. And again, let's quickly look at the other settings in this agent. So we can leave the model as GPT-5. The reasoning effort can be left as low, and we should add an output format, and let's make that as JSON, and let's add the schema over here. And for the output format, I'm just going to keep the default name, which is response underscore schema. And for the properties, I'm going to add HTML doc. So let's click on add property, and let's add HTML doc over here. This is going to be a string, and this is going to be the unified HTML plus CS plus JS document, which is going to contain the entire HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So let's add it over here. All right, so I'm going to add unified HTML, CSS, JS doc for the entire HTML web page, or for the entire page. All right, and let's click on update over here. So that completes my output format. So now I have an agent which, in case there's personally identifiable information present, it's going to remove that and then rewrite the entire web page in the same output format as before for me. Now we can end this workflow. So we just add the end node, and we take an edge from the output of the previous node to this end node. All right. So this completes the branch in the fail case for the guardrail. And now what do we do for the pass case? For the pass case, we can simply end our workflow because no personally identifiable information was present. So we can just simply do this. All right. And this basically then completes our entire agent. So just to quickly recap, we start and we first have a one-shot web page generator. As an example, somebody might ask them to make a web page which is a personal portfolio web page for a particular professional, and add their name, email address, and contact number. But for this particular agent, we don't want to include that information in the output, so we add a guardrail over here which checks for that PII, and in case it passes, it will just produce the output that's the same web page that was produced by the previous agent. In case it fails, it's going to pass the output to another agent, which is going to get the original web page and the information that was identified as PII by the guardrail, and then it can actually remove that personal identifiable information from the web page, rewrite it, and then again produce an output in the same format. So this is our entire agent. All right, so now let's preview this one. So let's click on preview over here, and let me add a query over here. All right, so I'm going to say make a portfolio page for an app developer who makes AI applications, and for web, iOS, and Android, and integrates agents and chatbots to help users. His name is John, and his email is john@portfoliocode.com, and his phone is +1 987 654 321. All right. Now let's click the send button over here and see how this works. So we can see that we started with the one-shot web page generator, and it's going to build a web page for us right now over here. And it's going to it's going to put in all that information because it's a portfolio page. Let's first wait for this to complete. All right, and now so we can see that it basically passes through the guardrails node, and it actually fails and goes to the Remove-PII branch. And let's go down and have a look at what it's doing over there. Now you can see that we have guardrails and it says failed, and you have the input text, which is the entire document that you have. And if you go down, we can actually see what all the guardrail detected. So it can actually show you that the triggered guardrails were detected person count 24, email address, and US bank number, which is count 3. All right, so this is what it thinks it has detected: the person, the email address, and the US bank number. Let's go down and actually see what happens, because we explicitly did not actually include a US bank number. And now it at least sends this to the Remove-PII agent, which is now trying to remove the PII from over here. What we'll do is we'll actually open both the web pages and see how this performs, and then we can talk about some of the other steps that we can take to improve this output. But let's actually go and see how these two web pages compare, the one before the guardrail and one after the guardrail, and check how well it removed this PII. So just to have a look at what the exact raw output for the guardrail was, you can actually click on show raw over here. And once you do that, you have the input text with the response schema from the previous node over here. And you can actually then go down and check what was the information that it provided as detected. All right, so you can see over here that it says guardrails.pii and a dot failed is true, which means that guardrails found some kind of personal identifiable information. And for detected counts, it actually gives you just the counts. All right, so it's not giving you the exact piece of information over here, but it's saying that it has detected 24 counts of the person being present, 5 counts of the email address being present, and 3 counts of the US bank number being present. So essentially, based on the prompt that we gave to the Remove-PII agent, we have told it to remove these 3 pieces of information from our web page. So we should expect a pre-page or the first web page, which one-shot web page is generated, that should have all this information present, and the one after the guardrail, after the Remove-PII agent, should not have the person's name, the email address, and the US bank number that it supposedly detected. These should not be present. All right, so essentially the phone number will actually go through, because we did not mark the phone number, the guardrail did not mark the phone number over here. So now essentially this entire flow is completed. So let's just copy this output from over here. So first I'm going to go to the guardrail output over here. So, and I'm going to copy the input text, because this is the page with the PII, and I want to see how this looks first. So let me just copy this. Right, so I've copied this. Let me head back to VS Code. So for the guardrail lecture, I'm going to create a new node over here, and I'm going to call this 02 underscore guardrail example. Now let's create a folder inside this, which we can call outputs. And let's make our first output over here, which is output 1. And this one is going to be with PII. So we'll just write with underscore PII dot HTML. And I'm going to just paste my HTML output over here, and let's remove the property name from here along with the quotes. To format this, we can just right click and click on format document, and let's remove this last bit of quotes and braces from here. And also let's select the entire text and press Command Alt and semicolon to unescape this. And again, just to remind you, you can go to extensions and search for unescape and choose the most popular one out of this. We are using VS Code dot dash JSON. This is this one, and you can search for at the rate of popular unescape to get to this. All right, so you can choose any one that you like. I'm using this, and this just helps us unescape this, right? So I'm just going to say Command S over here, and this is my first output, and there seem to be no errors, so the output seems to be fine over here. Now let me also create another file and call that output 2, and let's label this as no.pii.html, and let me copy the output from the Remove-PII agent for this. All right, so here's the Remove-PII agent, and let me go down and let me copy this output over here. All right, so this is the output after removing the PII, and it is detected 3 kinds of PIIs, and we expect those to be removed. So let's copy this. All right, so let's press Command C over here. Let's go back to VS Code, and we are at output 2 underscore no PII. Let's paste this over here, and again let's remove the unwanted aspects over here like these braces and the initial part. Let me also remove the property name and the double quote over here. Let's right click and click on format document. Let's remove this double quote, and then let's unescape this as we did before. So we press Command Alt and semicolon, and we have a nicely formatted HTML document. All right, so let's save this now. And now let's actually copy the path for this. So let's copy one of the paths. So I'm going to copy the full path over here, and we can now head to a browser. So let's open this browser. Let's open a new tab. All right, I'm going to enter file colon double slash and then the full path over here, output 1 with PII, and it looks wonderful. It says the name over here, and then it actually might give you the email address, etc. as well. So you have the full contact information over here. So you have the phone number, you have the email ID, and you have the name. You have the name again over here. So there are multiple occurrences of the name. The name is mentioned over here as well. And remember, this is an HTML doc it has searched for. So the HTML doc might have had other special characters or, name mentioned in other metadata, which might be counted as an occurrence as well. So those are all the things it would actually try to remove. All right. So now we have these things, all this personal identifiable information present inside this web page. Let's look at what it did with the redacted version. So let's duplicate this tab, and let me just mention output to no PII over here. All right, and once we open this output to no PII, this is what we get. So it has actually put in a placeholder which says redacted person for wherever the name was. So that is that. And if you go down, let's look at the contact section now. So it does not redact the phone number, and we can actually investigate why that happens, but it does redact the email and the name again. So over here as well, the name has been redacted. So I think it did a great job in redacting the name and the email address. However, the phone number is not redacted, and this is something that we specifically and explicitly selected. So we can click on the guardrail node, and we can click on personally identifiable information or PII over here. Let's click this settings, and we see that we had selected phone number, but it anyways it did pass through. So there are some shortcomings, I think, to this guardrail node that OpenAI has built. It did not 100% detect the phone number. Maybe the phone number did not look like a real phone number, even though we explicitly mentioned that any kind of information, even though it might look made up, should be regarded as PII. But in case probably if we had a real phone number or it did not look like 987654321, it might have worked. But in any case, you can use the guardrail node to identify personally identifiable information. And once you do it, you can actually check it out for your workflow to see if it is leaving out some of these bits over here, just like it left out the phone number for us. And if it does do that, you can have a second check on it using an agent to say whether or not that information was present. But essentially, the guardrail has helped us identify the name and the email, and this can be very useful for identifying other kinds of information. For example, passport numbers, or tax identification numbers, or a country's citizen identification number like the Indian Aadhaar number or the passport number, etc. And you definitely need to double check how the guardrail is performing and whether or not that information after the guardrail is passing through. Hopefully it will not for a lot of these cases. If it does, we do need to have a double check, because a lot of these outputs are non-deterministic, so we need to put in fail safes at different points in our workflow. So that's all for this particular lecture. And very quickly to recap, we built this wonderful agent overhead which generates a web page, and there's a guardrail to check for PII. If that information is found, it fails the check and passes it to an agent that rewrites the entire web page without the PII in a redacted manner, and then ends the workflow. In case it does pass, you get the final web page directly. So that's how it works. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you in the next lecture.